The Galactic Imperium's most decorated executioner just told his human prisoner he'd killed hundreds of her kind, and Emma Johnson responded by asking if he wanted feedback on his technique. Zilak stood perfectly still, his three-fingered hand frozen mid-gesture toward the neural disruptor array. In 217 years of service, across 847 confirmed executions spanning 23 species, no one had ever responded to his opening statement with constructive criticism. "I'm sorry," he said slowly, his translator struggling with the unfamiliar emotion of confusion. "What did you say?" Emma shifted in the restraint field, which was honestly pretty uncomfortable but not worth complaining about yet. According to YouTube analytics, 99.6% of viewers are not subscribed. That's a huge number. By subscribing the channel that is completely free, you'll help support the channel and never miss fresh content. I mean, "I've killed hundreds like you" is a solid opening, classic intimidation tactic. But the delivery could use work. You're going for menacing, right? Because it's landing more in the middle management trying to sound tough during layoffs territory. Behind the one-way observation glass, Imperial observer Kael'thas choked on his ceremonial drinking liquid. This execution was being broadcast across 17 star systems as a demonstration of Imperial power over the captured human resistance. The human was supposed to be begging by now. You dare mock me." Zilax's voice dropped to the register that had made warrior caste Draxians void their waist sacks in terror. "No, I'm trying to help," Emma said earnestly. "Look, I'm an accountant, not a therapist, but I've sat through enough bad presentations to recognize when someone's phoning it in. If you're going to open with hundreds like you need to commit. Maybe describe one, make it personal. Right now it's just a number, and numbers don't scare accountants." Kael'thas activated his emergency comm. "Command, we have..." "I don't know what we have. The human appears to be conducting a performance review of her own execution." Zilax activated the neural disruptor. The device had been calibrated specifically for human neurology, based on the 3 previous human prisoners who had lasted an average of 4 minutes before a catastrophic brain death. He set it to 30% power, enough to cause agony, not enough to kill quickly. The energy field enveloped Emma. Her body went rigid as artificial signals overloaded her nervous system, telling every nerve ending simultaneously that it was on fire, freezing, and being crushed. "Okay," Emma gasped when he deactivated it after 15 seconds. That's a solid 6 out of 10. Maybe 7 with the humidity in here. Is climate control broken?" Zilax stared at her. The Draxian admiral who had led the siege of Korval had lasted 8 seconds before begging. The human looked uncomfortable, like she was sitting in a waiting room with a draft. 6 out of 10, he repeated. "Well, yeah, I mean, kidney stones are about an 8. Childbirth is supposedly off the charts, though I haven't personally experienced that. This is definitely worse than a bad toothache, but not quite migraine territory." She paused. "Actually, have you tried angling the emitter array left? I think you're getting some interference from the overhead lighting." Behind the glass, Kael'thas was frantically reviewing the human's file. "Emma Johnson, civilian, accountant for a mid-level shipping company, no military training, no genetic modifications, no cybernetic enhancements. She's supposed to be average." "There is no such thing as an average human," his aide whispered, pulling up the preliminary reports from the human conflict. "That's becoming very clear." Zilax increased the power to 60%. This was the level that had made the Korvax warlord beg to reveal every military secret in exchange for death. Emma's screams this time were satisfying for about 30 seconds. Then they stopped, even though the device was still active. "Okay. That's definitely an 8, she panted. "But here's the thing, you're ramping up too fast. If you're going for psychological torture, you want to build anticipation. Let me dread the next increase. Right now, you're just speedrunning the pain scale, and honestly, it's desensitizing." "What are you?" Zilax roared, slamming his hand on the control panel. An accountant from New Jersey, Emma said, confused. I literally just told you that. Were you not listening? Because active listening is really important for effective communication. Kael'thas received the priority transmission from Imperial High Command. Continue the execution. Use any means necessary. This broadcast must show human weakness. Any means necessary. Zilax had clearance for techniques that were technically banned by 3 separate galactic conventions. He activated the suffering engine, a device that directly stimulated every pain receptor in the body while suppressing the mercy of unconsciousness. The Iltharian queen had lasted 45 seconds before her brain shut down permanently to escape the agony. Emma lasted 3 minutes. She was definitely screaming this time, a raw animal sound of pure suffering. When he finally deactivated it, she was shaking, tears streaming down her face. That, she gasped, that was a 9, definitely a 9, maybe a 9.5. How are you still conscious? Zilax demanded. Because you haven't killed me yet? Emma blinked away tears. Look, I'm not trying to be difficult, but what's the end game here? Because if it's actually killing me, you're being really inefficient. If it's making me talk, I've been talking this whole time. If it's breaking my spirit, I've got to tell you, New Jersey transit during rush hour was worse than this, and I dealt with that for 15 years. Impossible. You're using some kind of human technology to suppress the pain. I'm literally crying, Emma interrupted. Does this look like suppression? It hurts like hell. I'm just dealing with it. That's what we do. That's what humans do. We deal with it and we complain about it and we compare it to other terrible things we've dealt with. Have you seriously never researched your targets? Behind the glass, Kael'thas was pulling up every file on human psychology they had. Most of it was incomplete. The human conflict had only been active for 2 years, and humans were frustratingly diverse in their responses to interrogation. But there was a pattern, a horrifying pattern. Observer Kael'thas to Executioner Zilax, he transmitted. Our preliminary analysis suggests humans have an abnormally high pain tolerance due to evolutionary factors. They evolved on a death world where injury was constant. Their psychology treats pain as information rather than motivation. What does that mean? Zilax demanded. It means, Emma said helpfully, apparently able to hear the transmission, that pain just tells us something's wrong. It doesn't make us stop. We invented a numerical scale just to classify it. We literally quantified suffering so we could compare notes. Your entire technique is based on species that have a psychological breakpoint, and we kind of don't have that. Or it's really, really high, usually spite level high. Zilax felt something he hadn't experienced in 2 centuries. Uncertainty. You're lying. Everyone breaks. I've killed hundreds. Like me? Emma finished. Yeah, you keep saying that. But here's the thing. You haven't, have you? You've killed hundreds of aliens, different neurologies, different evolutionary backgrounds, different survival strategies. You've been practicing on species that evolved with submission instincts, fight or flight responses that include freeze and die. We evolved those out through sheer stubbornness. This is absurd. Zilax activated the Void Touch, a device that simulated the sensation of dying in hard vacuum, suffocation, freezing, and cellular rupture all at once. It was considered so inhumane that only 3 existed in the entire Imperium. Emma's screams were immediate and visceral. Her body convulsed in the restraint field. Zilax watched her face turn red, then purple, watched her eyes bulge as her brain interpreted the signals as real asphyxiation. He deactivated it after 1 minute. She was sobbing now, gasping for air that had been available the entire time. 10, she wheezed. That's a 10. That's definitely a 10. Then you're broken, Zilax said with satisfaction. No, Emma managed, still shaking. I'm just updating my pain scale. That's the worst thing I've ever felt. Congratulations. But you notice I'm still talking, still conscious, still me? Why? The word escaped Zilax before he could stop it. It wasn't a question an executioner should ask. It showed weakness, showed the crack in his certainty. Emma took several deep breaths, clearly trying to compose herself. Okay, I'm going to explain this once because you seem genuinely confused, and honestly, this job has got to be terrible for your mental health. Humans survived because we're too stubborn to die when we're supposed to. We walked across continents with broken bones. We climbed mountains that killed us and tried again. We got attacked by predators and turned them into pets. We found poison and made it into medicine. We looked at literally everything trying to kill us and said, "Not today. Pain is it's just Tuesday for us. It's just another thing happening." Behind the glass, Kael'thas was reading reports with growing horror. Humans had a documented history of surviving catastrophic injuries through what they called spite. They had athletes who continued competing with broken vertebrae. They had soldiers who fought for hours with mortal wounds. They had a cultural concept called walking it off. "Command," he transmitted. "I recommend immediate termination. The broadcast is no longer serving its purpose." "Negative," came the response. "Break her or kill her, but do it on camera. The other species are watching. They need to see humans can die." Zilax received the same transmission. His mandibles clicked in frustration. He'd never failed an execution. Never. His reputation, his entire identity was built on being the thing that broke the unbreakable. "I have other methods," he said quietly. "I'm sure you do," Emma said. "You've been doing this for 200 years, you said?" "That's a long time." Do you ever think about career changes? This seems incredibly stressful." "You're trying to distract me." "I'm trying to have a conversation with the guy who's torturing me," Emma corrected, "because what else am I going to do? I can't leave. You're not going to stop, so we might as well talk. How did you even get into this line of work?" Zilax activated 3 devices simultaneously: neural disruptor, suffering engine, and a new addition, the despair field, which directly stimulated the brain's depression centers. It was a combination that should have induced immediate catatonia. Emma screamed. It was a sound of pure agony mixed with existential anguish, the kind of cry that spoke of a soul breaking apart. It lasted 4 minutes before Zilax, disturbed by the sound, deactivated everything. Emma was crying silently now, tears running down her face, her entire body trembling. For a moment, Zilax thought he'd finally done it. Finally broken a human. "That was..." Emma's voice was barely a whisper. "That was really bad, like really, really bad. I felt like nothing mattered. Like there was no point to anything." "Yes," Zilax said. "That is the despair field. It shows you the truth." "It shows you a lie," Emma interrupted, her voice getting stronger. "Because here's the thing about humans and depression. A lot of us deal with that naturally. It's a chemical thing in our brains. And we've learned it's lying. That feeling that nothing matters? It's a liar. And we've gotten really, really good at recognizing it and fighting it. You just gave me an artificial version of something I already know how to handle." Zilax felt something crack inside him, not physically, something worse. The certainty that had carried him through 2 centuries, through 847 executions, through the knowledge that he was the Imperium's ultimate weapon against defiance. "What are you?" he asked again, but this time it wasn't a roar. It was a genuine question. "I told you, an accountant, Emma Johnson. I process receivables for a shipping company. I have a cat named Mr. Whiskers. I'm allergic to shellfish. I'm just a person. A regular human person. And that's your whole problem, isn't it?" Behind the glass, Kael'thas was receiving new data. The human fleet had transmitted a proposal, a prisoner exchange. They knew where Emma was. They'd known she was captured. This entire execution had been a test, Emma said, as if reading his thoughts. "You're broadcasting this to scare other species, to show what happens to those who defy the Imperium, but you're also showing every species in your empire that humans don't break, that your ultimate weapon doesn't work on us. How's that going for your propaganda?" Zilax looked at the observation glass. "Is this true?" Kael'thas didn't respond immediately. He was watching the data streams from the broadcast, across 17 star systems, in prisons and detention centers and occupied worlds. Prisoners who had been scheduled to break were not breaking. They were watching a human survive. They were learning that the Imperium's greatest executioner couldn't make one accountant from New Jersey beg. "Terminate the broadcast," Kael'thas ordered, "immediately." But it was too late. In the 3 hours since Emma had been strapped into the execution chamber, the entire calculus of Imperial interrogation had changed. You couldn't put that back in the box. Zilak stood over his equipment, looking at the human who was still crying, still trembling, still in obvious pain, but still conscious, still talking, still fundamentally unbroken. "You said I've killed hundreds like you," he said slowly. "You did say that? Yeah. But I haven't, have I? I've never killed anyone like you. None of them were like you." Emma managed a weak smile. "Well, I mean, they were all individuals, right? Everyone's different. But if you mean species, yeah. You've been practicing on aliens who had a breaking point you could reach. Humans have one too, probably. But it's way higher than you've got equipment for. We literally invented the phrase, 'pain is temporary,' and meant it as encouragement. So when you said I've been practicing for you, I meant you spent 200 years perfecting techniques on species they'd work on, which means you were getting really, really good at something that doesn't work on humans. You've been practicing, just not for the right test." She paused. "I'm guessing performance reviews in the Imperium are really harsh, huh?" The comm came alive with Imperial High Command's voice. "Executioner Zilax, you are ordered to terminate the prisoner immediately and end this display. The human fleet is proposing a prisoner exchange. We have agreed." Zilax looked at Emma, really looked at her, saw the tears, the trembling, the obvious signs of trauma and pain, saw that despite all of it, she was still meeting his eyes, still present, still herself. "You're terrified," he said. "I can see it." "Of course I'm terrified," Emma said. "I'm in horrible pain and I thought I was going to die. I still might die. I'm scared out of my mind. But being scared doesn't mean I stop being me. It doesn't mean I break. It just means I'm scared and dealing with it and really, really hoping you don't turn those things back on because that hurts so much." For the first time in 217 years, Zilax deactivated his execution chamber equipment and stepped back. "What are you doing?" Kael'thas demanded through the comm. "Following orders," Zilax said quietly. "Terminating the display, preparing the prisoner for exchange." He released Emma from the restraint field. She collapsed immediately, her legs giving out. He caught her automatically, an instinct he didn't know he had. "Thank you," she gasped. "Oh God, thank you. Can I just sit for a minute?" He lowered her to the floor. She sat there, shaking, crying, looking nothing like the unbreakable force she'd been moments ago, looking exactly like what she was, a terrified person who'd been tortured for 3 hours. "You were never unafraid," he said. "No," Emma agreed. "I was terrified the whole time, but my mom used to say that courage isn't not being scared. It's being scared and doing it anyway. I was scared, so I talked, because talking meant I was still me, still Emma, still here." "I need to update my protocols," Zilax said, more to himself than to her. "Might I suggest leading with, 'What can you tell me?' instead of, 'I've killed hundreds like you'?" Emma offered. "Just, from a pure efficiency standpoint, because this whole thing could have been a conversation over coffee." "You were never going to tell me anything." "Well, no, but at least we'd have had coffee." 2 hours later, Emma Johnson walked out of the Imperial Detention Center as part of a formal prisoner exchange. The human ship captain took one look at her, bruised, shaking, barely able to walk, and wrapped her in a thermal blanket. "Are you okay?" he asked. "No," Emma said honestly. "That was the worst 3 hours of my life. I need a psych eval, probably 6 months of therapy, and I'm never going to feel safe in restraints again. But I'm alive. I survived, and I really, really need coffee." "What happened in there?" Emma looked back at the detention center where Zilax was probably filing the first incident report of his career that included the phrase, "subject critiqued methodology." I had a conversation with a guy who's been doing the same job for 200 years and just found out he's been doing it wrong. I think I ruined his whole worldview. Is that mean? That feels a little mean. Emma, you were being tortured. Yeah, but I feel bad about it anyway. Is that weird? That's probably the shock talking. She accepted the coffee someone handed her. Oh my God, this is the best thing I've ever tasted. Even better than not being tortured. Behind them, in the Imperial Detention Center, Zilax was composing a new document. Not an execution report, a resignation. After 217 years of being the Imperium's greatest weapon, he had discovered that weapons could become obsolete. That expertise meant nothing when the fundamental assumptions were wrong, that he had indeed been practicing just for the wrong species. He titled the document carefully, "On the Ineffectiveness of Traditional Interrogation Methods When Applied to Human Subjects, a Case Study in Necessary Doctrinal Reform." He'd killed hundreds, just none like her, and that made all the difference. Across the Imperium, in prisons and detention centers and occupied worlds, prisoners watched the broadcast footage over and over, watched a human accountant survive the unsurvivable, watched the greatest executioner in Imperial history fail to break one terrified woman who kept talking. Resistance movements found new courage. Occupied populations found new hope. And the Imperium learned a lesson that would reshape their entire approach to human conflict. You could hurt them, you could scare them, you could make them cry and scream and beg, but humans had spent 200,000 years walking through fire and calling it Tuesday. They'd looked at everything in the universe trying to kill them and decided to live anyway. The Imperium's tactics had been perfected on species that would break. They'd been practicing, just not for humanity. On the human ship, Emma Johnson finished her coffee, filed an expense report listing extreme discomfort during unauthorized extended work hours, and went to find her cat. She'd have nightmares for months. She'd need therapy for years. The trauma would never fully fade, but she'd survived. And in surviving, she'd taught the galaxy's greatest executioner that there were some things you couldn't practice for, some things you just had to accept, like humans. Stubborn, terrified, talking humans who rated their torture on a scale of 1 to 10 and offered constructive feedback. Because that was just what they did.